All right, let's dive into one of the most audacious, just absolutely mind boggling military engineering feats in all of ancient history, the Siege of Alesia in 52 BC. We're talking about a moment when Julius Caesar decided that the best way to win a battle was to build something that was, well, completely and utterly impossible. But here's the real kicker, the mystery that makes this whole story so incredible. Why on earth would a brilliant general, surrounded by enemies, build a fortress that literally trapped his own army inside? I mean, it sounds completely insane, right? But believe me, there was a desperate, brilliant logic behind it all. So, to really get why Caesar made this crazy call, you have to understand what was going on in Gaul. For years, Rome's whole divide and conquer thing was working like a charm. The Gallic tribes were too busy fighting each other to be a real threat. But then, one man changed everything. His name was Vercingetorix, and he did the unthinkable. He got the Gauls to unite. All those little problems suddenly became one massive, motivated headache for Caesar. And Vercingetorix's strategy? Oh, it was brutally effective. He knew he couldn't beat the legions in a straight-up fight, so he didn't. Instead, he started a scorched earth policy, burning crops, burning villages, destroying any food the Romans could get their hands on. This forced Caesar's army to carry every single thing they needed to survive. It was brilliant, it was frustrating, and man, it was working. So eventually, Vercingetorix makes his big play. He pulls his huge army back to Alesia, this town perched way up on a high plateau surrounded by steep cliffs. To the Gauls, it looked totally impenetrable, the perfect spot to wait out the Romans. But to Caesar, it looked like a cage. And Caesar, well, he was pretty good at building lids for cages. So instead of a bloody head-on assault, he did something else. He told his men to start digging. The fancy word for this is circumvallation, which is basically Latin for, hey, we're going to build a giant wall around you. The plan wasn't to storm Alesia, it was to starve it into submission. And the scale of this thing was just immense. We're not talking about some little fence here. This first wall was an 18-kilometer line of fortifications. To put that in perspective, that's the length of a modern half-marathon, built by hand, by soldiers with shovels and axes. It was just a massive project, all designed to keep Vercingetorix locked up tight. And this wasn't some simple wall either. Remember, Roman soldiers were expert engineers. They dug two massive ditches. They even diverted a whole river to fill one of them with water. Behind that, a huge earthen rampart topped with a palisade of sharpened stakes. And just to top it off, watchtowers dotted the entire thing. This thing was a serious, formidable prison. So, with this inner wall done, the trap seemed perfect. Flawless, even. Vercingetorix and his 80,000 warriors were completely sealed off. Nobody in, nobody out. It was just a matter of time, right? All Caesar had to do was wait. But as it turns out, time was a luxury he just didn't have. See, Vercingetorix had one last ace up his sleeve. Before he was totally boxed in, he'd sent messengers out all across Gaul, calling for a massive relief army to come and bust him out. And now, Roman scouts were bringing back bad news. A really, really big army was on its way. All of a sudden, the guys laying the siege were about to become the ones under siege. And the new odds? They were terrifying. Caesar had about 60,000 men. The Gallic relief army that was on its way, well, ancient sources say it was over 200,000 strong. Now, even if that's a bit of an exaggeration, the point is, the Romans were about to be massively, hopelessly outnumbered, and they still had that other army at their backs. This quote just sums it up perfectly. You've got Vercingetorix's army on the inside, this gigantic relief army on the outside, and smack dab in the middle, the Romans. It's pretty much the worst place an army can possibly be. So what do? Retreat? I mean, any other general would have, but not Caesar. His solution was pure, unadulterated, audacious madness. He ordered his men to build another wall. This one, called a contravallation, would face outwards to defend against that giant relief army. He literally decided to wall himself in. So now, the total length of these Roman fortifications was nearly 40 kilometers. 40! Can you imagine? He had built this gigantic defensive ring with his own army sealed inside, ready to fight a war in two directions at the same time. This wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a self-contained fortress of death. And Caesar knew walls alone wouldn't cut it. So, in front of that outer wall, his men engineered this
This absolutely brutal obstacle course. Deep trenches to stop a charge cold, hidden pits with sharpened stakes at the bottom that they nicknamed lilies. And they even varied rows of sharp wooden spikes called sipi. The whole goal was to create pure, unadulterated chaos for any army that dared to attack.
So the stage is set for one of the most unbelievable battles in history. The Romans are now stuck defending two fronts. They've got to hold that inner wall against Vercingetorix's desperate army, and at the exact same time hold the outer wall against that enormous Gallic relief force. If either one of those walls breaks, it is game over. And that's exactly what the Gauls did. They launched a massive, coordinated attack on both walls all at once. They found a weak point in the Roman outer defenses and just threw everything they had at it. And for the first time, the Roman line actually started to buckle. Seeing the crisis, Caesar, wearing his famous red general's cloak so everyone could see him, personally rode right into the thick of it to rally his men.
But just holding the line wasn't going to be enough. Caesar had to break the attack. So he made his final decisive gamble. He sent his cavalry on a huge, sweeping maneuver all the way around the battlefield. They came out of nowhere and slammed into the back of the Gallic relief army, causing absolute panic. See, an attack from behind like that is devastating, and the entire Gallic assault just disintegrated.
From the walls of Alesia, Vercingetorix could only watch as his rescue army was routed and scattered. His own people inside the fortress were starving. It was over. The next day, the story goes, he mounted his horse, rode out of the gates, threw his weapons at Caesar's feet, and surrendered. The great Gallic rebellion had come to an end. In the end, Alesia wasn't just a battle. It was a masterpiece of engineering. Caesar didn't win by overpowering his enemy. He won by outthinking them and outbuilding them. He won with shovels, stakes, and just an unbelievable amount of pure nerve. A victory that would cement his legend and help pave his way to absolute power in Rome. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? Was Caesar's plan to trap his own army in the middle of a battlefield an act of unparalleled military genius? Or was it a desperate, insane gamble? And maybe more importantly, when you're talking about the moments that define history, is there really any difference between the two?